Alrighty, good morning. It is Friday, September 5th, and today I am going to do a little bit of event planning. I'm going to at least work on, but maybe publish the guidelines and rules and categories for our yearly paint competition that's coming up in January. I've published the categories previously, but I want to get the full document out so people can see it. They've known the competition is coming, so they've been painting their miniatures, but I want them to be able to see the full document well in advance so they can make sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted. It's basically the Golden Demon Paint competition. This year we changed the name this year because we're an independent club now. So it's now called the Golden Ghost because the ghost is our mascot because we play all our games and tournaments in a haunted house. So it's called the Golden Ghost. There's 12 categories this year, I think. Um, they're they're the basic ones from Golden Demon with a couple of quirky ones thrown in there. I'll put the link to our categories down in the description if you want to check them out. Feel free to steal them and use them in your own paint competitions or whatever. They're like I said, they're pretty basic stuff. Most of them are taken from Games Workshop, and then we added a couple. After that, there's a big sports night tonight. So I'm not sure. Sometimes I hobby straight through football and basketball and stuff. Sometimes I just sit and watch. So we'll see. But hopefully I'll get to some painting tonight. But definitely going to work on those paint competition guidelines, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I thought I would go through our regulations and rules and everything for our paint competition that we're doing in January. Um, it is now called the Golden Ghost since we've gone independent, and I figured I would include it not just because I'm including everything that I do related to the club and the hobby in this series, but also if anybody else wants to run a similar competition in the future and they've never done it before and they want ideas or whatever, or at least they might learn what not to do, then uh, they'll have this information. So, starting off, we have our 12 categories. So I did something a little different. Last year we didn't have let's see. We have two categories here. Here we go. So we have a no, where are they? Here they are, down here. These are the categories I added from last year. Non Warhammer Fantasy and non Warhammer Sci-Fi. So we have categories up here that are for. Oh, this is a typo right here. Hold on. There we go. So we have categories up here that are literally any fantasy or any sci-fi model. But then the new categories are specifically non-Warhammer fantasy models and non-Warhammer sci-fi models. And that's just to get people who might, they might not paint Warhammer or they might paint Warhammer, but they're just figure they'll paint Warhammer miniatures for this. Now, they could paint Warhammer miniatures for the other categories, but they'll also have to paint something non-Warhammer to enter these categories. So it just kind of lets people spread out and maybe paint things that they're not normally accustomed to. But starting at the top here, we have our fantasy single miniature. This is any fantasy model on a 50 millimeter circle or smaller. Or if it's a square/rectangle base, then at least one dimension must be smaller than 50 millimeters. In addition, a 50 millimeter square goes in this category. Otherwise, if you don't say that, then if you put a 50 millimeter square in the large category, it gets a little weird because then you have like an ogre brute or ogre, whatever they're called, the wizard butcher, an ogre butcher against like a black dragon, and that's a little weird to me. So, despite the fact that the fantasy large model is any fantasy model on a 60 millimeter base or larger, or a square rectangle with both dimensions 50 millimeter or larger. That's for like your smallest base you're going to put in that category realistically is a 50 by 75. So like the Beastman thing, Shagoths, dragon ogres, them. That's probably the smallest thing you're going to see in a large model. But hopefully people will do like dragons and stuff. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. Um, so that's those two, and then we have fantasy unit, which is just anything you want, but it has to be at least 2 models, and this has to be a game legal unit. So you can't just paint like Krondas and Karazai and say that's my unit. Um, they have to be in the game. They have to be a unit. So you could paint 10 Steel Helms or 3 Kurnoth Hunters or whatever. Then we have the same categories again for sci-fi. I didn't include the caveat for sci-fi with the rectangles and squares. I don't think there's a sci-fi game that uses squares and rectangles. There probably is, to be honest, somewhere out in the ether, but certainly not one that is played around here. And so, if it comes up and someone asks, I'll just tell them which category to go into. And then sci-fi unit, of course, same thing as sci-fi fantasy. Then we have historical, which is any historical model or unit that must be a 15 mil scale or bigger. The smaller scale in a lot of competitions, there is a micro scale. We're not doing it though. I'm not very good at photographing those things, and they're kind of hard to judge because of how small they are. Like in Golden Demon, they're easy to judge because the painters are insane, and they take them to an insane level. We have some great painters around here, but I don't know. I just don't really like the category personally, unless you're like really getting up there with your skill level of painting. So we're just not doing it. Then we have the youth category, which is any model or unit painted by someone who's 15 years or younger. Really hoping to get more entries in this category this year. We're going to do some advertisements out in the community, and hopefully, if only 3 people enter, you're guaranteed a prize. So hopefully, maybe someone enters who's never even painted a model before. They come get a model from us. We give them a couple of paints. They paint a miniature. Hey, they get a trophy. So that'll be fun. Then we have a diorama, and any single dimension of these dioramas cannot be larger than 12 inches. I don't need someone coming in here with if you've seen Squidmar, that channel, I don't need someone coming in with the Manta diorama that's 4 feet across. So then we have the open category, which is any single model. Can be literally anything, just has to be a single model. And then, like I said, the non-Warhammer fantasy model, and then the non-Warhammer sci-fi model. So prizes for each category, we are doing first, second, and third. You get a trophy for that. First, you get a gold trophy. Second, you get a silver trophy. Bronze, or third, you get, surprisingly, a bronze trophy. I just get little sort of cheap plastic trophies on Amazon. And then last year I 3D printed hammers. It was a Grey Knight hammer. Whatever they're called. Psychic hammer thing. Demon hammer. And put that on top of them and then sprayed them. This year, because it's now the Golden Ghost, I'm going to 3D print some ghosts and put those on top of the trophy. And then we will have a overall winner, which is just a slightly fancier trophy, spray painted red last year. Maybe we'll change it this year, who knows? And that's for the Slayer sword at a Golden Demon. It's just the best entry out of everything at the event. And then these down here are basically the guidelines. Miniatures can be from any manufacturer unless a category specifies otherwise. The only 2 that specify are the non-Warhammer categories. All miniatures must be a 54mm scale or smaller. So anybody wishing to enter with G.I. Joes, I'm sorry. They will unfortunately be not allowed. If you're wishing to put your model on a display base or a plinth, they must have a footprint no larger than 2 times the regular base of the model. So if you have let's not do math on camera here, but if you had a 1-inch base, a 25mm square base, that's 1 inch by 1 inch. That area is 1 square inch. The plinth or display base that model was on could be no bigger than 2 square inches. So hopefully you get it. There was a little bit of confusion with that. I do mean the square footage or the square inches, whatever. Not that if you come on a 1x1, you can be on a 2x2, because that would be 4 times the footprint. So you get double your footprint to be on. And that's, again, just to, I I don't want someone coming in with a 12 by 12 diorama base with a single miniature in the middle of it and be like, all right, there's my single miniature. Um, no one would try something that ridiculous. And if they did, I would just push them into another category. But nonetheless, it's nice to put it in writing just so we have it. Then just a note about number of entries. Every participant is allowed to enter every category they qualify for. So the only category with qualifications is the youth category. So if you're over 15, you can't enter that one. But otherwise, you can enter every single one, but you can only enter each one once. Conversions are perfectly allowed and welcome. However, the quality of the conversion is going to be taken into account. So if you have a well-painted miniature but a really crappy conversion, like if you just have an arm sticking off a shoulder or something, that will be taken into account, and you may lose because of that. But if you convert it and it looks good, then it can definitely help you. So the responsibilities of anyone wishing to enter, they must be personally handed in by the person who painted them and registered at the booth. This will on the day of the event, I should say, January 10th. This is going to be on 2026, not 2025. Let's change that. No entries will be accepted on behalf of competitors who are not in attendance. So Bill cannot come up to the competition and bring Steve and John and everyone else's entries with them. You have to come submit your entries in person. No entries will be accepted on behalf of competitors who are not in attendance. Now, if someone has some crazy circumstance, I won't stick to this if they're a regular in the community. That's fine. But, on average, one guy can't show up and submit entries for 10 different people. Entries will be accepted from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. An entry form will be required to be filled out on the day for each entry presented, and then all entries must be collected by the entrant in person. Models can be collected from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. So they have 3.5 hours in the morning to come submit their models. They'll fill out a form. We tear that form in half. They get one half. We get one half. The half we get stays with their miniature. It's not really a big deal. I put that in mostly because it's in every paint competition's write-up. It's not a big deal here because I know pretty much everyone's model who's entering. Like, if someone just pointed at a model and said, who does that belong to, I know who it belongs to. But it's better to have it all on paper so there's no confusion and no worry about somebody taking someone's model. And then you must pick your model up again at the end of the day. All entries should be the work of a single hobbyist, so this should not be teams of people working on an entry. And all work on models, including to but not limited to the painting, modeling, converting, and basing, must be performed entirely by the entrant. So this is a single person. You have to do that, and it has to be you. There was that controversy last year, maybe 2 years ago, with the AI background that was created for a miniature. I personally don't really have a problem with that in general. I think that backgrounds shouldn't be on miniatures anyway. But if they're going to allow a background, and if somebody can print a background, then I don't have any problem with an AI generating it and then printing it. It's just it's as much effort as someone Googling jungle background and printing it as asking an AI to make a jungle background and printing it. So I think backgrounds shouldn't be a thing no matter what, but if they're going to be allowed, then who cares where the person gets it from. But in this competition, everything you do has to be you. That makes it easy. I don't have to toe the line of are we going to allow backgrounds? Where can they get the background from? Blah, 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 blah. Everything on the model, on the entrant on the entry must be yours. The end. All competitors will be fully responsible for the transport of their own entries to and from the competition. Once entries are booked in, we will, of course, undertake to look after them as carefully as we can. However, we cannot accept responsibility for loss or damage to individual entries. Models are entered into the competition at the competitor's own risk. Entry to any of the competitions gives the state entry to any of the competitions. How about categories? Categories gives the Statesboro Warhammer Club the right to photograph and publish the details of models entered as we see fit. This blurb was, I think, lifted wholesale from the Warlord Games, or no, War Games Illustrated paint competition. Um, I don't know really how much this would hold up if we broke something. Hopefully it would. I'm gonna do my best to not break anything. This is really if like we accidentally break something. Hopefully they don't come after us. Like I'm gonna be really sorry. I'm gonna do my best to fix it. However that makes sense to fix it. Or like not fix the model. I'll let them do that, but rectify the situation. But I just threw this in here just in case. And then I just have the schedule. So the submission is for 3.5 hours in the morning. Then we're going to judge for 2 hours. This might be extended depending on how many entries we have. Last year, 2 hours was fine. We had, I think, about 60 entries across all the categories. So, we're not in a position. So our judges are not professional painters or anything like that. They're people who understand the hobby and understand painting, but at the end of the day, they're not like the end all be all. So we're not going through and giving individual feedback on each miniature because that's not who the judges are. It's more of a like just going through and finding the three best and then figuring out the order they're going to be in. And so 2 hours for 60 entries was plenty of time. Then we'll do the award ceremony, which will be handing out the trophies. Hopefully we'll have that live on maybe live, at least a recording of it on this in this series. Yeah, probably. And then they have an hour and a half after that to pick up their miniature. And yeah, that's it. And then at the bottom of all my events, I always put, if there are any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I do this for two reasons. One is that if people have questions, they can ask me. Two, it's a very specifically worded sentence, so I know when people are copying and pasting my event descriptions because they'll copy and paste this last part also, and it's hypothetically possible that they could hand type this exact same sentence, but there are many other ways to say, if you have any questions, let me know. And so this specific sentence usually keys me into the fact that someone has copied and pasted my event info. And not like I'm going to do anything. I just find it gratifying that, like, what's the phrase? Copycat or imitation is the sincerest form of no. So you know the saying I mean. So that I get excited when people copy my stuff without asking. You know who you are. But yeah, that will about do it on these guidelines. I'm pretty happy with them. If you are watching this video and you're planning to enter or you're not planning to enter and you see a glaring oversight that I've missed, please let me know. If you want to enter, like I said, January 10th, Statesboro, Georgia, at the Holland House, most likely. Things could change, but it's probably at the Holland House. Yeah, we'll give out some prizes. It'll be a great time. And then, of course, I will publish all the photos and probably the award ceremony right here on this channel. All right, well, it's much later now since I recorded the talk through of the painting competition. There it is. The basketball game has ended. The football game has ended. And I was just looking back at the footage, and holy crap, that clip is 17 minutes long. So I am going to probably cut this episode off here. I am going to go do some painting right now, but I will probably throw that into tomorrow's episode for two reasons. One, because holy crap, I talked for 17 minutes. But two, tomorrow, which is Saturday, everyone else is going to be out of the house, and so I'm going to take that opportunity to basically take every item out of this garage from all over, take it out there, reorganize it, and then bring it back in. I'm not sure how much footage I'm going to get doing that. It's a lot of just me carrying boxes. It might be cool to get a time lapse of like everything appearing out there and then bringing it all back in. Or maybe leaving and then coming back. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to film a bunch of it. If it's decent, I'll put it in the thing. Otherwise, tomorrow will be a painting focused episode. It'll have that painting stuff in it anyway, but it just might also have the time-lapse in it. I used to do on this channel, every Saturday, I would release a painting tutorial. And I would still like to do that. It just may be in this series. So I'm going to do some more like official tutorial tonight and then throw it into tomorrow's episode. And I'm not sure if that's how I'm going to continue to do it, mixing it into this series or releasing it separately. We'll have to see. But at least for this week, that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, that will do it for this episode, though. All that's for tomorrow. So thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I would encourage you to click the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. And I will see you tomorrow.